Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast. I am Matt,
I'm Luka.
And I'm Will.
and this is the podcast for all things fantasy and sci-fi nerddom. We have a very exciting topic today where we're going to do the worst fictional events to live through. So these will be like, maybe natural or unnatural disasters that our characters have had to go through. We'll also be getting into Luka's Litany of Literature, some real world examples of this main topic from Will, and I'm going to be bringing a monster to the table as per usual. Few things. We just finished releasing our first episode yesterday, and we are very grateful for everyone's positive responses and things like that, showing support to the pod. Those things are great. But remember to follow us on Instagram at Lords of Lore and our YouTube channel with the same name. And make sure you're liking those videos and subscribing to the YouTube channel, giving us some 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcast. And if you do so, we will read those reviews. So that's a good way for you to get your, if you want to provide some feedback, or maybe we missed one of your favorite characters in the last episode, you can let us know with a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast. Helps out the show. And we look forward to hearing from you guys, whichever way. Leave a comment on Instagram or on our YouTube video. We'd love to hear what you guys think of the episode and the topics. But without any further ado, Luka, what's been on your mind this week?
Oh, interesting that you ask. So for episode 1 of the podcast, Luka's Litany of Literature, I would like to talk about something that's been bothering me this week, listening to Malazan, book 5, as I have been.
Sorry, it's Malazan, but
yes.
Go on.
Malazoon. How do you guys feel about time jumps in the middle of a series? I guess it's been bothering me because book 5 happens, I don't know, like 100,000 years prior to the events of books 1 through 4. And This is something that I was thinking about a lot while I was reading Stormlight Archives also, because book 1 does a lot of the bouncing back and forth through like visions of a character. And I don't know that I like this non-linear type of storytelling. Like it sort of throws me out of sort of, I don't know, like the feeling of the energy of the story up until that point. Like,
and it's the whole book.
Yeah, the entire book. Like one character, like there's characters mentioned that we've heard of, but there's like only one character we've met in the first 4 books now is like one of the main characters. Like I'm really enjoying the book just because Steven Erikson is like so good at creating, like building up like the tension into like this one climax moment where like all of the characters you've been following come together. So like I'm excited to see how it ends, but it's also, I want to get back to the characters that I knew from books 1 through 4. It has been like really bothering me because I haven't been getting through this audiobook as quick as the other ones because of this. I just want to see how you guys feel about, like, do you guys find it, I don't know, shocking?
I think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just meant, like, do you guys find it like shocking or jarring? Like, does it throw you out of like a story completely? Like, would you stop reading something if it's like, if it does that?
Okay, so if it's a full book, that's tough because obviously that's super long. But I sort of love that sort of time jump when it's like an episode of a TV show. Like some big plot reveal happens, and then the next episode of the show, it's like, oh, see how kind of thing, right? But I do like prequels. Especially the Star Wars prequels. I'll take that L for this pod, but I don't really mind. But like when it's a full book, it just feels like I don't know. I think I'd feel just as off put by it as you do. What do you think, Will?
I don't know. Like, I guess it just depends on the characters that are in it. Like, but then again, like, if they don't like mention it later on in the series, like let's say it's like a 6-part series or something like that, and this happens in like book 2 or 3, and then they just like don't really reference them, like it would just feel like out of place for me. Like, yeah. like if there was going to be like some like overarching like continued use or like purpose for having these
Right.
characters and or like events happening in the story, then like it just kind of seems like a filler.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get that vibe from this for sure, just because it's like still explaining things that happen later, or like even when I was reading The Way of Kings, like book one in the Stormlight Archive, like everything you're seeing in these back, like the flashbacks, is like super important and like reveals so much about the story. But it's something about the shift in like energy from like
Mhm.
the characters you're reading about, and then like, oh, let's go back 30 years and like let's see how like something that this character just encountered actually happened. Or
Hmm.
I like that. I like my story to be chronological.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's the beauty in having worked out your story or your world so much that you know the events that have preceded the actual timeline in which the story takes place. That when you do those reveals, they should feel meaningful. But I don't like not to criticize the author, but it feels sloppy to me if you have to go back as far as telling a complete story so that the story in real time makes sense. Um, for me, like the fun thing about mysteries in fiction is that, or in literature, I should say, is that they reveal themselves through the eyes of like the characters. So we're all sort of discovering those mysteries together. So I feel like if it's a whole book, that's too much. That's like,
Yeah.
but that being said, I do love prequel movies and stuff. So I don't
Is
know,
it?
but just thrown in between two present day stories feels awkward to me.
It sounds like almost like. Well, yeah, I will criticize the author, but it sounds like like
He's
maybe
Canadian, Will. How could you? It's the Canadian guy, right?
even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I haven't read anything about the Malaysian series, but
Molasses, right?
molasses, mayonnaise. Um, like, did he just like without like giving too many spoilers? Like, did he just like use this book as like a way because he like it's him like delegating all of his world building and like contextual stuff. Is that what it is, or just
No, no, like it isn't at all. Like
oh okay.
it just it's like way out. Like it's just like it's not even explaining mysteries that have been set up per se. Like I don't want to. It's not that it's bad. Like it's really good. Like Midnight Tides. Like it's really really good. It's just something about the like taking me out of the story I've been listening to and reading and putting me in this new one, and then being like, this is all part of the same series. Like yes, it is, but it just feels a little, you know, jarring.
Yeah,
Like in Stormlight Archives, it's like a lot of people would call The Way of Kings like a near perfect first novel. Like, but still, it's something about that like throwing me back like 30 years, 40 years. Like in this case, a couple like 100,000. It just it sort of makes me almost want to stop reading it for a bit. Like it took me a while to get through The Way of Kings because I like stopped reading once I got some of these flashbacks, and I just like wouldn't want to keep reading for some reason, just because that like it's like the shift in, I don't know, like the feeling you get like just reading all these new characters all of a sudden just
Yeah,
throws me out of the groove.
I think like sometimes like a lot of people would argue that we didn't need to see the origins of Boba Fett in like the prequels, like especially like a lot of people think it wasn't executed. I disagree, but there's some, you know, truth to that. We don't need to see everything because it takes away from like the appeal of some of these characters, which is just shrouded in mystery. And I think the same could be said for a setting um, and just a storytelling uh, voice, I guess. Like, yeah, I don't know. What do you feel though about the opposite? Because like your background right now, Rage of Dragons starts off with one of the best openings of any book I've ever read, um, and then immediately shifts to 200 and some years later. I can't remember the exact. So how do you guys feel about like when it goes from characters that you start to enjoy and then like, okay, yeah, that happened. let's move.
I've honestly never read it where like you've invested a lot of time in a bunch of characters, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now let's jump to the end of their lives. Like now all these characters are dead, like they've been dead for 100 years. Here's some new characters like halfway through a book, or like in like this next series of a book or something. I've never read a series like that.
Okay,
I don't think I'd like it.
I have.
Spoiler.
Yo, I'm
from downtown.
On-site reporting. We're here with the guy who authored the book series that Luka's just been speaking about. No, I just read a chapter, like the opening of a book, like literally last night, or figuratively. Yeah, for like, oh shit. Sorry, I almost knocked it over. The the Under the Eagle series by Simon Scarrow, which I've been reading, but like that's legit how like the first like part one is of the story, but like it works because it's like a historical fiction and it's like talking about like this like group of soldiers who are basically like fleeing from the enemy, and then they get like this like thing stuck, like this like treasure chest stuck in the mud, and then like their officers like to hell with it and stuff like that, we got to keep going. But then like it ends and it's like super corny, but like it kind of worked because it was like that officer's name was like Julius Caesar, and then it just like jumps like 200 years. So yeah, so like in that instance I think it works, but definitely like I don't see it like working any other way except for like the intro.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if I don't know, that's kind of whack just to like put it in the middle of the series. Like maybe like have like a spin-off series if you're gonna do that.
So there is one other thing similar, in that there's this thing called the machete. Sorry, I'm gonna keep bringing up Star Wars because, but there's something called the machete order. So people who haven't seen the movies and are genuinely or generally rather, unfamiliar with them, they're told to watch it as probably like Rogue One, 4, 5, then flash back to 1, 2, 3, and then finish with 6, 7, 8, 9. So that it's like, what? Spoilers for Star Wars. He's your father? How did that happen? And then flash back to the prequels and be like, oh, I understand. How does this all wrap up? So that there's still like a climax at the end. Because I think finishing with episode 3 for some people is sort of like, it's a bit of a downer, to be honest. Everyone dies. But
spoilers, come on.
Yeah, spoilers, sorry. I was gonna say spoilers for Avatar / Korra. One of the things you brought up, Luka, is like flashing forward to the end of a character's life. The first time I tried to watch Korra, the first episode, like I watched it maybe a week after finishing The Last Airbender, and I was like, absolutely fucking not.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead. I was like, no, dude, fuck this show. Fuck out. Like, I was so upset because it's like, and we don't even get to see he had children. Like, Katara's old now. Like, it was so sad. And like, but I will say, after going back and just dealing with it, they do like a really, really great job. That I can't talk enough about how good those shows are. But that's a similar sort of like time jump where I was like, no, thank you. See you in a year. I can't do this emotionally right now. Yeah, I had. So I read this book. It's part of this series called The Echoes of Fate, and the book's called The Rise of the Ranger. Philip C. Quintrell. I think I got that all right. But the book starts. You're like following like this kid. He's practicing, or like he's studying with these elves. He's like their like maid or something. I can't really remember, but he's been taken in by these elves. Their elven city gets attacked by dark elves, and his teacher gives him like this crystal. She says, run to the woods, and I'll come find you, but you have to get this thing out of here. So he does. He takes off and he gets a little bit ahead of his family, who's also there as they escape the city. And as he turns around to see where his family is, like while he's outside of the city now, he turns back and he just sees like ruins of like the city he just left, and like ancient, like overgrown ruins. And he's like, what's happening? And some dude pulls up on him and he's like, yo, kid, what are you doing out here? He's like, I just came from the city. He's like, yeah, okay. No one's been in that city in 1,000 years. It's like cursed. And he's like, what? And then after that, then it goes 40 years later. So now, like, yeah. And then, so the kid's like, now he's like a man and also 1,000 years old. And it's a really good series. I'll send the links to you guys and stuff. It's awesome. But like, it was one of the wildest time jumps I've ever experienced. Like, okay, we're 1,000 years. I've seen that before. Now plus 40. Like, what? It's so strange. But yeah, I think I'm with Will on this. It feels sloppy to me, but I'm sure it's done well. So
yeah, like I don't want the takeaway from this to be Midnight Tides is bad. It's not. It's excellent. Like it's very, very well written, and I would still 100% recommend all of Malazan in the order it was published and everything. But
okay, real quick, I know we're we've been on this for a while, but how do you feel about jumps forward? So say there's like a time travel element, and it goes like we failed, and this is the future. Or this is the future with if this thing happened and we jump forward like I don't know a couple decades or like however long. How do you feel about that in the middle?
if we're talking about like in the context of one book or one story, I prefer forward jumps rather than backward jumps.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Will?
Yeah, definitely. Immediately, what comes to mind is Lost, like the TV series.
Never seen it.
I mean,
Oh, what? Okay, yeah. Well, never mind that.
No, go ahead.
Well, so like it got like super like criticized, but in like I think it was season 5. Yeah. Anyway, so like they had like multiple jumps per episode, like flashbacks and like forward flashes as well as side flashes. So
What's
that
a
was
side flash?
That was made by Steven Spielberg, right?
No,
I think he's maybe like an executive producer, but
yeah,
it's J.J. Abrams who
All right, J.J. Abrams.
Yeah,
it was the head writer.
Yeah, J.J. Abrams.
Damon Lindelof. That's who it was.
Wasn't that series like
Lindelof?
everybody said like it doesn't have payoff?
Yeah, doesn't it turn out that it was like purgatory?
Well, no. Okay, no. So, yeah, if you didn't like spend the time to actually binge watch the whole thing, but no, there's no purgatory element towards it.
Okay.
But I don't want to ruin the spoiler, or I don't want to give out a spoiler for it. But it's not purgatory, and it's been like clearly confirmed by the writers and stuff like that. They're like, nah, had you paid attention in season 4.
With the cups, right? That's the thing. I don't know anything about the show. I just hear people talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of sloppy because it was kind of like a primetime TV show for a while. So how could it not get sloppy after a while? But
the one for this like forward jump that came to mind, you guys have both played Dragon Age, right?
Yeah.
That one mission where you go to that castle and that guy sends you forward in time and like you're going through the castle still and it's all your friends like locked up and they're all fucked up. They're like, where'd you go? Like,
oh yeah.
When you left, everything got bad. And they're all like turned into like what is it called? Red lyrium.
Yeah.
It's so fucking sad. It's like, I watched all my friends die. Let's get out of here. I'm like, yo, what the it's so sad. But the end of the mission is you sort of going back and fixing that. And you have to, nobody else remembers, but you have to live with that. It's so fucked up. This is great. But the cool thing about that was like, if you didn't do a specific dialogue option, you missed that whole mission.
Yeah.
So I remember telling my friend about this, like when the game first came out, he's like, yo, what are you fucking talking about? That never happened, man. Yeah, okay. Any final thoughts for you, Luka?
Nope, that will do it for this episode of Luka's Litany
like
of
a
Literature.
sound bite for the end, like a but with that, let's move over to Matt's monster musings. And today I think we'll start off with a story. And I'm a shitty storyteller, so bear with me here.
Oh God.
I take you to Japan. Uh, and we're by like a small waterfall into this small pool in the forest. And there's just a man sleeping next to a tree. The man wakes up. He sees there's a spider web on his shoe coming from the woods across the pool. And he figures, oh, this must be a water spider that is confused. So he gently, because he's a kind hearted man, takes the spider web off his shoe, puts it onto the nearby tree, goes back to sleep. And a few moments later, that tree is ripped from the ground over to the other sides of the wood, trunk and all. And he goes, oh, and gets the fuck out of there. He goes back to the village, tells everybody, stay away from the pool. There's something there. There's some sort of spider creature. It's bad vibes. And so for many years, people do until one out of town lumberjack comes to the village for work. And while he's on his way, he stops at the pool. Um, and he's cutting down a tree, but he's clumsy and his axe goes flying into this pool. And so he goes to retrieve his axe and he's having a difficult time finding it. And a woman comes out of the woods with the axe and says, oh, I think you may have dropped this. So they begin talking. The man becomes smitten by this woman, and he leaves for the village. And every day he spends in the village, he comes back to the pool to speak with the woman, and they begin falling in love. Um, Although every day he goes, the next day he feels slightly worse, and his physical appearance becomes a little bit more messed up each and every day. He starts to become like emaciated and gaunt. Um, he just looks sickly. His skin turns more to like a shade of gray. Uh, and the monk in the village says, hey, I think there's something wrong with you, buddy. You don't look so good. And the guy explains to him what he's been doing so they can try to find and get to the bottom of it. He says, yeah, I've just been going to the pool. There's like this really sweet chick out there. And he goes, huh? And so he takes them there and they get attacked by some sort of spider creature. You see where this is going, Luka. We'll get to that in a second. And the monk goes, yo, that's not a woman, bro. That's a Jorogumo, which is this type of shape-shifting spider lady. But the man can't help himself, and he's in love with this woman. And so that night, after returning to the village with the monk, he goes back and he's never seen again. Yeah, so that's my story for you guys. And the creature I'm bringing to today is the Jorogumo. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Jorogumo. Anyways, Joro translates, and mind the crude language here, can refer to a prostitute or also refer to the women in that time period who would wait on royalty. So the Jorogumo roughly translates into whore spider, binding bride, entangling bride, and harlot spider. Luka, I think you're pretty familiar with this creature because this is actually a creature I have used in the D&D game, and I have right here. I don't know if this will pick up on camera for the audio listeners. I'm holding up a miniature I painted, as well as its spider form here. Ooh, yeah, that's creepy. Sorry if we have some arachnophobes watching the
Bad
podcast.
memories.
Yeah. So the Jorogumo is a spider hybrid woman. So usually depicted as the what would you call that? Spiders have two sections, right? So abdomen and thorax or whatever. I don't know things.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, and then a woman's body as sort of like an ant would have. I don't know what that front part of an insect is called. It has a woman's body. No, idiot.
Like a centaur.
No, you're probably right. I don't know. It looks like this, man. I can't describe things. Yeah, we'll post a picture as the video plays, and on the Instagram as well. And can have just it could be a spider with just a woman's face, a woman who's on top. Yes, exactly, Will, like a centaur, or just a spider, or just a woman. And so, yeah, they lure men, they seduce men, and then lure them in and feast on them. A lot of comparisons get drawn to like Shelob from the Lord of the Rings, and which I didn't know this, and I don't know if it's true. I think this is just stands of Tolkien, but there seems to be like this theory that he was a severe arachnophobe. Um, you could probably speak on that a little bit, Will.
I don't know.
But oh, you've never heard that?
No.
Oh, you're the Tolkien guy.
Yeah.
Mondor. But yeah, so apparently, like when he was a child, he got bit by a tarantula. Um, and that's sort of what inspired Shelob later on. He like there's a letter where he wrote about his fear of spiders. But I don't know if I think it's been sensationalized a little bit more than was probably accurate. But so yeah, similar to Shelob, but obviously able to shapeshift. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have on this creature. I did use this again, like I said, in the D&D campaign. A woman wife came to the D&D group claiming that her husband had been missing. The group did some investigating, found out that he was a regular at a brothel in town. They questioned some of the people at said brothel, and in doing so, revealed that there was this creature working in disguise there, um, you know, seducing men and eventually saying she would run away with them and leading them to her lair that was in the woods nearby, which the players then went to and defeated this uh, just disgusting creature. But it can also have like children that it spawns after it eats men. So you have like these little spiders. Yeah, I'm so sorry. If Mal, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. You can skip past this part. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stories about it. Like, there's this guy who's like singing on his deck, and this woman comes up, an older woman comes up and says, "My daughter thinks your voice is so beautiful, and she wants to marry you. Will you come meet her?" And leads him to this like mansion nearby that he's never seen before. And he gets like bad vibes from it, and he's like, "No, I got to get out of here." And as he does, he looks behind him, and there's nothing there. It's all like this illusion that they've created. And when he returns, there's like spiders all around his house. And he tells his guards, like, "You'll burn it all down." It was super creepy. It showed up, and I think in a few places, a lot of video games have this type of creature, but super creepy. I myself, I'm dealing with my fear of spiders. I'm very afraid of spiders, but a friend of mine educated me and shamed me for killing spiders. And since then, I've been doing my best to just throw them out of my house without having to kill any of them. But I am very scared of spiders. So this is a creature that haunts my dreams. Yeah, how do you guys feel about the Jorogumo?
Strongly dislike. It would be my nightmare to run into this thing.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
Oh,
I
another
ran
place
into
that
a
pops up
couple.
is
That's terrible, man. Yeah, it also like carries the skulls or and sometimes just the heads of its victims like on its fucking thorax. We're gonna say thorax, but we know it's I'll take I'm gonna
spider
say
butt.
thorax. Yeah, that's little spider butt. You can see all the
That's-
heads hanging off
That's
there.
fun.
Abdomen.
Yeah, this is like one of the first big minis I painted. Just because it was I'd never seen a creature like this before I got this miniature. So I had a lot of fun doing it.
It was so horrifying. You had to paint it first, right?
Yeah, that's
Then attack
I
us
had
with-
to, I wanted I like legitimately I wanted to get it out of the way because I knew I wanted to use it in the game, but I was like, man, I don't want to stare at this mini any longer than I have to. So let's just paint it and be done with. It gave me nightmares. I've noticed like recently a lot of the things I paint do. I painted these zombies for a commission a couple months ago and dreamed of like applying earth tone shade to the this is terrible. Yeah, okay. So as part of Matt's Monster Musings, we're just gonna do a quick comparison from this week's creature to last. So we'll start with you, Luca, and then we'll go to Will. Who would you take in a 1v1 in a fight against the two, but also which one do you like more?
If they were fighting, like openly one-on-one, I think I would probably choose the Wendigo
Ooh.
to win. Which creature I like more? I feel like the spider lady is like a more interesting mythological creature to me personally. Far more disgusting. I would rather encounter a Wendigo than
Oh, really?
I would, yes. Actually, if you could just like, I take that back. I would rather encounter the spider lady because she would be in the illusion of.
Yeah.
It'd be
Hell
like
yeah.
like the Love Death Robots episode, Aquila Rift.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great comparison, actually. I fucking that show's so good.
So good. Can't wait for season 2. Anyway,
Yeah.
I would choose the Wendigo to win in a one-on-one fight. I would rather run into the spider though, just because of the illusion part. If I'm gonna die, I'd rather not know that I'm being eaten alive rather than
Yeah. Like at the end, it would suck just as bad as the Wendigo, but
Yeah.
at least leading up to it, you might
you'd be like,
enjoy
oh wow,
yourself.
what a beautiful woman. And then
Exactly. Yeah.
like, oh,
Oh no, you got me. You got me. With the Wendigo is just complete fear.
Worth
What
it.
about you, Will?
Uh, I would just choose the Wendigo because it would just freeze it, right? It would freeze the spider.
I don't know if it can freeze, but maybe. I don't know.
Depends on iteration.
Right.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
spiders die in the cold, so there you go, buddy.
Great point. Which one do you prefer mythologically?
Oh. Yeah, I'd probably say Wendigo. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think just because like I think just because I haven't seen as much like I guess like content with it in it, whereas
Yeah, for
like
sure.
being like a secret weeb, I've encountered this creature before.
Secret weeb. Oh my gosh, Lord of Lore, and also Secret Weeb. I will say though, because I think they're both they represent, one is like lust and temptation, and the
Hell
other
yeah.
one is like famine, survival, depravity. Like
Just me
yeah,
combined, all of that.
these were the secret ingredients until chemical X. Just Will appears. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that'll do it for Matt's Monster Musings. We'll head over now to Will's Wondrous Wisdom, where Will brings us some real world lore connected to our main topic. So go ahead.
Yeah. So things you don't want to, like, I guess, endure. So I mean, there's like, the world's like full of that.
I should say too, our main topic again is the worst fictional events to be have upon you to be.
Yeah, and I mean, like, pretty much like every cultural or like history record definitely has like tons of that. Especially the further you go back, right? But and it's all like recorded in like a lot of, I guess, like like cultural narratives and like stories that we hear today and stuff like that. So like I mean, you can't talk about like terrible things that people endure without and like talking about history without talking about like flood myths, which are huge. Not just in size, because floods are pretty big, right? Haha.
You gotta go, man.
I'm reaching right now. No, I mean they're encountered in like everything, right?
Yeah, even like Noah's Ark type of thing.
Yeah, so like Old Testament, as far back as like Samaria and Mesopotamia, uh, as well as like in Polynesia, like Hawaii, India. There's a whole bunch. Actually, in North America, there's a lot of indigenous cultures. There's tons that you could find. This simple Google click, and it seems like a lot of the way that they're all portrayed is either. Oh, sorry, my neighbors being in the hallway. Yeah, so they're either portrayed as like these like great disastrous events, that people are experiencing like currently, or like at the time of like that these characters are experiencing, like such as with like Noah's Ark, where they've happened like previously in previous generations, and like people hear about it. Um, and like they're like the whole like flood myth thing is either used to discuss uh like I guess like throwing away the world and starting anew is kind of the big thing,
Right.
which is like the case with like the Old Testament, but like in
A
Sumeria,
cleansing, if you will.
yes. Just water cleans. It's
People drowned, man. Like,
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so like Old Testament, you have like a cleansing of the world, whereas in like the Sumeria, in like the Sumerian records and stuff like that, like it's kind of like the start of the world. So, which I mean, two sides of the same coin, right? Yeah, and I mean, we also can't talk about terrible historical things to go through in this year, particularly without mentioning some form of plague. So definitely the
Yeah.
plague of Justinian, which was, I think, the first major, like, I guess, like pandemic of like the Black Plague. I don't know its scientific name, but you know, the one like the rats started pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of like definitely led to the downfall of, well, it was kind of like the hammer in the coffin for like the Western side of the Roman Empire, and it definitely devastated like the Eastern side as well, like specifically when it got to Constantinople, which is modern day Istanbul, which is kind of like the gateway to the East, right? So then from there it spread pretty much everywhere because it's this massive port area in the Mediterranean, and yeah, it like spread everywhere from all the way up to like the UK, like Great Britain, to like Africa as well, and other parts of East Asia and stuff like that. So
So yeah, I just double checked. In saying so, I could be wrong again twice over, but I do think this year where this plague actually started, was it Justinian?
yeah,
Okay, so two funny things. The first one's not funny. The second thing is, um, like obviously as you're living through it, you don't call it the plague of Justinian. Like it's just the plague, right? But
yeah,
this guy was, unfortunately, like some of our elected officials, not very great at handling the pandemic as it was, or the plague as it was. And so after the fact, they were like, yeah, let's put it all on asshole over there. Call it the plague of Justinian. Which, yeah, fuck that guy. But also this year, 536, terrible year for the world. There's also reports of like volcanic ash. Well, at the time they didn't know what it was, but just the sun not being around, coming up for like 4 hours a day, and even then it was like a very low light, so no crops grew. Not enough sunlight. The temperature was too low. I think the temperature worldwide dropped on an average of like 4 degrees Celsius. So like a lot of bad things were happening this year, and they didn't start to pick up until like a decade later. And they can even like go back for like ice samples, and this year, this like period of time, it's black, like so much ash. They think from volcanic eruptions, that's sort of what the evidence points to, but they're not entirely sure. Just a very terrible time to live. A lot of people died. I think I could have the number wrong, but like 50 million people died of the plague of Justinian, which is unfathomable. Like that's, I think some countries even lost like 80 to 90% of their populations, which is like unheard of. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, continue.
yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. Like in his rule, he was plagued with a lot of like shittiness going on, but it's kind of funny because he's definitely like one of the more talked about like Byzantine rulers. But I mean, if you look into like the history of Byzantine rulers, that's not really saying much because
Yeah.
they pretty much went through like pretty much like 10 different rulers per century kind of thing, because
Yeah.
it was, yeah, if you kind of like took their throne, you didn't really last very long, which is kind of
It's like the best Ottawa Senators general manager. That's not a lore reference, but continue.
Yeah, yeah, or like having like the Iron Throne kind of in, if we're gonna do
Oh
a lore
yeah,
reference.
that's way better reference.
Yeah. Um,
Sorry.
um,
Continue.
yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention as well is I guess just like dark ages in general in the world, um which was also like kind of a shitty time because everyone, like half the world, specifically Europe, kind of just fell off while everyone else was moving forward.
Yo, Europe kind of fell off.
Yeah. But one of the cool things is maybe it's not so much as like a thing to, well, I guess it is a thing to live through, but like so like during my undergraduate I took like this world literature class and we were talking about like um we had to read like this like old English version of like Beowulf, which was
Okay.
oddly enough one of the chief transcribers, like one of the more popular transcriptions or translations. Yeah, was written by Tolkien and
Oh, really?
yeah, because he was like an English professor too. Like he like taught himself like how to read like old English and stuff like that. Like yeah, pretty wild dude. But anyways, so like when we were getting like I remember like there was a few lectures that we had like on like the context, like specifically with the setting at the time, and like um so like when like Danes and stuff like that started like because there's a whole lot of like different types of like populations migrating into Great Britain at the time, and but like at but like they still saw like all these like Roman like settlements and like I guess like towns and cities and stuff like that. Well, I guess like one or two cities, but like they were all like crumbling because like there's like really no upkeep because there was so much migration and like a lot of like petty fights and stuff like that. So for like I want to say like maybe like a century or two around the time when like Beowulf was like believed to have happened, um, or I guess like when it would start to become like a popular tale is because it was almost like a post-apocalyptic world that like people were kind of like living in.
Wow, yeah.
So, because like you'd see like these like crumbling ruins everywhere, but like everyone's just kind of like hanging out. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I find that super interesting that they took to it then because
Mhm.
like now and I think maybe the elephant in the room is we're also living through a pretty shitty time right now. Like I mean obviously for like listeners too. We're not trying to downplay anything that's going on right now. It's very bad for a lot of people. And we can appreciate that so yeah, but
Mhm.
right now I don't want to read any stories. Like I've read some books over the last year that feature like elements that are similar to like epidemics or like plagues that sort of release, and even like running D&D games. I'm like staying away from it. It's just like should be like escapism.
Mhm.
Like reading books and playing D&D. Like man, I don't want to hear any more about viruses and shit. Like
Yeah.
this is my me time. But
Um, oh yeah, and like as a side note too, because like and this wasn't just happening in the British Isles, but this was also happening everywhere else, like specifically with like Carthage. So like kind of like the Morocco, Cyrene area, or I guess I don't know. Yeah, like the whole like northern Africa part, like just west of Egypt, like that was the case as well,
oh wow.
because like they went from like Carthaginian to like Roman like invaders, and then with like Vandal kings and stuff like that, which was I didn't even know that was a thing, but apparently like a
What
big
is that?
like a big group of the boys came down from like Germany and just like and just like smashed out like all of like the Roman occupations in like North Africa. Then they just like stuck around,
Oh,
which is
wow,
like wow. The thing I didn't know that was a thing, and like it was
yeah.
like pretty much from like all from like Spain all the way pretty much like east towards Egypt, like along the coast, like all these German boys were just hanging out. So
No idea.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't I really love like the dark age like history and stuff like that because like so much stuff was going on, but like we never really hear about it because exactly like a fun time to like.
No.
I guess it's not as like celebrated in like media and stuff like that, and like
And the ratio of people who were literate to not being able to tell their stories and experiences is definitely pretty low. So,
yeah,
a lot of like we just won't ever know.
yeah.
You know,
It's kind of funny because like pretty much like everywhere else in the world just like like fuck that, let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Just like yeah, just like close off the doors like
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I don't know, I guess that's it. Let's move on to me.
Any questions, Luca?
Not at the moment.
Riddle me this.
All right. So then, Luca, I'll then ask you
Oh.
to maybe go into a little bit of definition of this main topic.
Sure. So our topic today is specifically horrible events that happened in sci-fi fantasy and why we think we definitely would not have survived, or it wasn't that bad. Like we could probably have made it. Like
Yeah, like all of mine are like world ending. Like that's it. Like everyone dies.
so who would like to start us off with an example? Matthew, would you like to?
Sure. So let's just issue a little bit of warning. If talk of world-ending events is not something you want to listen to right now, that is fine, and you could come back to this part of the podcast when you feel ready to take something like that on. Because I think some of these will be a little bit depressing, and we'll try to draw some light out of them. But just a fair warning for anybody who might be feeling that. But my first example, speaking of the floods, Will, the Great Flood of Hyrule. So I think we got Ganondorf making a special appearance from Miami. But so I think for a lot of people, especially for me, a lot of people I grew up with, introduction to fantasy was in the form of the Ocarina of Time. That's sort of like where people like really started to appreciate like that RPG feel of like exploring things, and also like I'm a dude with a sword going around doing things. For me, anyways, especially. And so I think that sort of touchstone that we all sort of have is with the Ocarina of Time. And so this game, the Wind Waker, in which this event is told, is pretty much, apart from Majora's Mask, the most direct, I think, sequel to Ocarina of Time. In that the hero of time who you play as in the Ocarina of Time is specifically mentioned as a character here. In some other works as well, but those happen like centuries and sometimes decades later. Oh my god, this guy. For audio listeners, Will's being a fool. But anyways, the Great Flood of Hyrule. So, like I was saying, Ocarina of Time, you defeat Ganon and Ganondorf. And okay, so this all gets complicated with like 3 different timelines. This one's in the adult 60. There's fucking, this is gonna get so hectic, but I promise I'm getting to it. So there's a timeline where you beat the guy, and there's a timeline where you lose. Okay, that's called the downfall timeline. Then there's the hero wins, child, hero wins, adult. So the adult one, as we know, if you've played through the game, you age 7 years rapidly. You get sort of stuck in the Temple of Time kind of thing. And then if you defeat Ganon, this is sort of what happens next. So that hero, the Link you play in that game, leaves Hyrule to go just live his life. He's, paid his dues by saving the world and whatnot, and defeats Ganon, but Ganon's not truly defeated. And comes back years later and begins wreaking havoc on all of Hyrule again. And this time there's no hero. There's no reincarnation of the hero because the hero's alive somewhere else. And so Hyrule basically waits for a savior that doesn't come. And Ganon, brings, as he does with him, his squad of monsters and terrible things, and just begins destroying everything. And so in the last ditch plea to save the kingdom of Hyrule, and the world, the people of Hyrule pray to the gods, or the goddesses, I should say, to save them. And they make a deal that says, yeah, we'll save you guys, but you have to end Ganondorf. And the king of Hyrule agrees to do this. And he uses his magic to contact with the gods. And he seals Hyrule Castle in this sort of bubble. And as he does, the gods are good on their promise. They start flooding the entire earth with like this sacred rain that's not like normal rain, apparently. It's harder to traverse, and I'll get to some of the worst things about it later. But yeah, so the people of Hyrule, the ones that are able to, flee to the mountaintops to get away from this rain. They're not sure if it's going to surpass the mountaintops, but basically the whole world gets flooded, similar to like the myths we were talking about before from real life. And that's it. That's all the gods do. They flood the world and they say, all right. And so the survivors lived their lives out on these mountaintops that then become sort of like islands. And yeah, it's a very terrible time. So for the people who are like living in like Castletown, let's say in Ocarina of Time, so you're just a person going about your life. Ganondorf, the thief king from the east, south, I can't imagine the map right now, west. um, he comes and starts wreaking havoc on the land once. That's bad. You get turned into like this zombie creature that knows nothing but grabbing the nearest living thing and trying to kill it. Then that nightmare is over. This little guy in green clothes comes and he's like, I saved the day. And you're like, yeah, little guy, thank you. You know what? Go off and be happy, man. Thank you so much. And he goes. And then like 10 years later, you're just chilling. Like, oh, remember when things were really bad? Yeah, I'm so glad that's over. And then that dude comes back and he's even more angry because you foiled him last time. And he starts fucking up the world again. And this time it's way worse. You're like, okay, but green dude's going to come back. He's probably really strong now. And he never does. And you go, okay, well, if he doesn't come back, the gods will save us, right? No, drown. Like, yo, what the fuck? That's terrible. And then to make matters worse, they don't kill Ganondorf at all. He survives this somehow, this flooding of the world. They forget entirely about the whole world that exists below because so many centuries pass before a hero is reincarnated to actually handle Ganondorf, whose powers have been diminished because the Triforce has been split, whatever. Fucking but even like, okay, so how bad this flooding is there's a race in Zelda called the Zora. These are amphibious humanoids that, obviously can breathe water, swim underneath water. Their whole place of residence, their home is underwater. Their temple's underwater, all this. The monsters that Ganondorf brings with him somehow adapt to the flooding. Like, they don't get killed by it either. And they're so bad that those water breathing people are like, we got to turn into birds. this is not working. And they evolve and become this bird type race. Doesn't make any sense, but that's how bad shit is on the earth. They're like, yo, the fish would rather be birds because right now it ain't working underwater here. Yeah, it's pretty, like, you can't swim from island to island. And there's like a mechanic in the game that sort of highlights this. Like, if you're swimming, you sort of have like this meter that goes down. And if you spend, I think it's like a minute or something, you just drown and die. You restart because it's a children's game. But yeah, it's sort of that illustrates, and it's been like confirmed that this water's like not easily traversable. Yeah, so it would really suck to live in the land of Hyrule after you thought you were saved from Ganondorf. So that's mine. That was like 10 minutes of me ranting. So I'll let someone else take the second one. Go ahead, Luka.
Wow, that really sucked. Like how the gods only helped the evil people they said you need to destroy.
Yeah. It's really messed up. And they're the gods that created the world, and they were just like, this time, nah. They're like, reincarnate a hero from us. They're like, there's no time. Throw the rope. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, my example is from Malazan.
What?
So
Never heard of it.
minor spoilers for Memories of Ice, which is book 3. No, book 4. It's book 4. The main antagonist of Memories of Ice is this dude called the Panyan Seer, and he is a religious leader. That's all I'll say about him as a character, just so there's no spoilies. He has an army that is like a normal army, but then he has another army called the Teniscowry. And this is the apocalyptic event that I chose to talk about because it was so horrifying to listen about. Like, I'm just going to dive into what the Teniscowry is, which is the minor spoiler. So the Teniscowry is the peasant army following around the Panyan Seer's main force. And it's made up of essentially the peasants of his first cities and the survivors of the later conquered cities.
Okay.
And he keeps them in a constant state of madness, essentially, by never giving them any food, water, or equipment. And they feed themselves and equip themselves by invading cities. So they eat the people of the cities they conquer. So they're essentially like meat shields for the main army. Another minor spoiler so in the Teniscowry, there's women, obviously. Men, women, children, everybody's in the Teniscowry. They're all in a constant state of starvation because they have no food. And the only food they can get is when they invade a city and have humans to eat, essentially. They don't do any farming or anything like that. So their only access to food is invading cities, essentially. They're also a fear factor. So they're like essentially like tens of thousands to 100,000 maddened peasants trying to tear your population apart and eat them. Within the Teniscowry, though, are these women who... Okay, so here's the spoiler for part of the story. So these women, they essentially force themselves onto men who are dying, and they give birth to their children. And so essentially they give birth to children whose fathers are already dead upon being conceived. And these children are known as the children of the dead seed. And they're like just mentally, like entirely just, just so messed up. They're like closer to animals than people. And essentially when the Teniscowry enters a city, they just consume everything in sight. And that's their purpose.
Yeah.
And just like this, it's not even...
These are the bad guys, right? Like
yeah, obviously, like the Panyan Seer is the main villain. Like, but the thing about the people is like they're just normal people, and their city was destroyed and attacked, and they're like, it's either die or be like... part of the people would be like consumed, and part of them would join the Teniscowry, not by choice or anything, just by circumstance.
Right.
That's how it grows. And just
so now you're forced to survive by basically becoming one of them. Not just in that we're going to kill you if you don't, but you need to eat to survive. Yeah,
exactly.
That's really fucked up.
But the horrifying part of it is they're meant to be like that. They're created like that by the Panyan Seer.
Yeah.
To be like essentially a meat shield for his... And then they serve another purpose later, but that's like also a minor spoiler.
Okay.
But I would not survive an invasion by the Teniscowry. That's what I wanted to say. It was one of the most horrifying things.
It was horrifying to hear.
The level of cruelty is it was difficult to listen to. So I decided to share it with all of you so you can hear about
it. Yeah, no, that sounds absolutely terrible. What the fuck?
I think I'd live. But
I mean, people do survive it. Like, there's people that like survive the invasion and become part of it, but it's like,
just don't go to the city.
Yeah.
just don't be there.
Yeah. Yo, just run, bro. That's awful. Will.
Yeah.
Cleanse our palate as much as possible.
Yes.
With your world ending.
It's gonna get worse. No.
Yeah.
This week I definitely went quantity over quality.
Oh boy.
Yeah, because like there's so much to. I mean, it's such like a popular trope, I guess, in a lot of media that we consume.
For the audio listeners, we're all being fooled.
Yeah. So like my personal favorites are from the Silmarillion, with specifically with like the War of Wrath and the Sinking of Numenor. So the War of Wrath is like effectively ended the First Age. There hasn't been that much writing on it because it's kind of like, I think like, well, so like the Silmarillion was kind of just like Tolkien's like side notes for like world building.
Yeah.
And there's like, I think he like purposefully like left some of that stuff out, just kind of like, it's so like that way you have like more room to like talk about stuff later on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But like, effectively, like, so like the continent of Middle Earth was actually like twice the size that we see in like Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits, but like half of it got deleted because like there's this massive like war of like good versus evil, and like basically just like the effects of the war like on the environment just like annihilated like half the continent. And like,
is this the war with Morgoth?
So it was like the final war with like Morgoth, because
okay,
like, well, so like they actually like never killed Morgoth, so like Morgoth actually exists during the Lord of the Rings, like Return of the King. They basically just like threw him out this door, so like he's like no longer a part of like the universe, so he's just like watching. It's like he's like watching from like a window outside, but he can't do anything. It's like him looking from the outside
me
in.
watching the Ottawa Senate. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for real. And then to follow up with that is the Sinking of Numenor. So like as a reward for like man's deeds and stuff like that, or like a certain group of men during the War of Wrath, they were like granted like this like special island in between like Valinor and Middle Earth. And like the one condition is they can never sail west to Valinor, which is kind of like the heaven on earth kind of thing. So it's effectively like Tolkien's like version of Atlantis. And then I think it's cool because it happens like so suddenly. Basically there's like one king who gets like corrupted by Sauron, and then
wait, corrupted by who? Say
Sauron.
it.
Sauron.
Okay, yeah.
So he convinces him to go west to Valinor to basically invade. So as soon as they land on the shores, they get like BTFO'd because there's like it's like the island of gods, right?
What's BTFO'd?
Like
beat the
fuck out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So then, and like as a result, basically like I guess like the universe's creator, Iluvatar.
Yeah, man.
He basically just like he's like, well, you guys did what I told you not to do. So then he like basically like nukes the entire like island. So
Yeah.
like I think it's just like horrible because it's so sudden. Because like, can you imagine like going like hanging out or like going to like the market, and then you just like look up and there's like you just get like nuked out. So then yeah.
But there are survivors, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
it's like immediate, as in like the effects were immediate. It wasn't like it was instantly deleted.
okay.
It was kind of just like a massive storm with like meteors and stuff like that.
Holy.
Yeah, but like some
10th level spell.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's kind of like, those are my two favorites. I mean, yeah.
My favorite apocalyptic events.
Yeah.
In descending order.
Because just for people who are listening, Aragorn is the last of the Numenor, right?
No. Well, no, because this depends if you watch the movies or just read the books. But there's he's like his family was like kind of like one of the chief families of the city that didn't align with Sauron and sail west.
Okay.
Because like Sauron rolls up and then like the king our Farazan is basically like we're going west, and then like Aragorn's like ancestors, specifically Elendil and um Isildur, they're like, yo, fuck that, like we don't want anything to do with that. So
Right.
then they just kind of like, well, the city's gonna get nuked out, so we might as well just like start making preparations to go to our settlements that are on the coast of Middle Earth.
Right.
And then they move in and create like the kingdoms of like Arnor and Gondor and
Right.
Mordor and stuff like that. Yeah. So like it's definitely kind of cool because it kind of like sets up the entire, like it explains like why these, like it kind of explains like the differences between like Gondor and like the rest of, I guess, like human society.
But they don't have like, so the Numenor people, they were gifted like long life, right?
Yeah,
The
so they had like, I guess, like hot, above
Okay.
average intellect. They were taller, like considerably taller. I think like Elendil is supposed to be like 8 feet tall or something like that.
Shit.
An
Could have played
absolute
for the
unit.
league, man.
Yeah, just like basically like superhumans, like, and like definitely like long life. Like I think average age span was like, I don't know, 150, 200 years kind of thing. Um, yeah, it's good, and like all of that was because they were given like this blessing for their deeds and stuff like that against like
But
Morgoth.
the present day Gondorians, is that what they're called? They don't
Yeah,
have that, right?
no,
But
because I mean, there's just
Aragorn
been,
still does, though, right?
yeah, because he's like the Dunedain, which is kind of like the descendants of, I guess, that family that left
Okay.
Numenor.
That's what they call him at first, right? Like Bilbo refers to him as just that
He's a
name.
Dunedain.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, because like there's like the Northern Kingdom, which is where they usually hung out, because like Gondor kind of just became, I guess, more of like a mixing pot.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, yeah, that's my, those are my two faves. But I also do like the Dark Souls series. So in each game, it's like the world is pretty much ended. Like the apocalypse, like kind of just happened. Is kind of how it feels.
You just missed it, man.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, oh, you just woke up. Oh, sorry, buddy, you missed it. Like it happened last week. Um, that's just kind of what happens in the third one. But the it's cool because especially in the third one, they have like this thing where like the world is basically like, because like Dark Souls is all about like the cycle of
Right.
like, it's called like the cycle of fire and stuff like that, and it's basically gods just like holding on to the world that they created because they know humanity's up next to kind of create it, but they don't want humanity to like move on because they kind of rely on humanity to exist. So then basically like the world keeps like getting sicker and sicker, and by the third Dark Souls, it's basically like we find out that like the world is like this cycle of like restarting the age of fire has happened like an untold amount of times, like just like millions of times pretty much is what we're left to assume. So like the world is like completely covered in ash, and like one of the cool things is that basically like the, like I guess like it's almost like a gravitational pull. So like all these different areas, like like very differing like geographical like regions and stuff like that are basically just like getting pushed into each other. So like, for example, like there's one area where you're in a swamp, and then if you enter like this door and you go down these stairs, you're basically like in these caverns that when you look into like the game's like lore files, you find out that this was like a desert society.
Oh,
But like
okay.
because like the world is basically just like mashing
Yeah.
together.
Like terraforming, basically.
Yeah. But it's
That's
cool
cool.
because like, I mean, like completely disastrous effects on everyone because like everyone's dead.
It's what do you call that? Like a farmer, right? If you have 4 different fields, you're supposed to switch the seeds you plant
Yeah,
because after like a decade, the nutrients that seed uses will be exhausted, sort of thing.
yeah,
Cross sectioning, or I can't remember,
yeah,
but that same type of thing though.
yeah. Pretty much. Like,
It's just happened so many times that like there's nothing left to give. Like,
yeah, and it's cool because like you can see like the world. There's like so much like the fire has been restarted so many times that there's like ash like you could like see everywhere, and like that's like what the main character's title is, like Ashen One, because basically like the world basically keeps like waking people up to like
damn, Pokemon is dark, man.
to like handle the and like end the cycle and stuff like that. But like I think it's just mad depressing. Yeah.
It's always turning since the world. Cool. Yeah, and you spoke a little bit last week about the 2 snakes that sort of guide you on
Oh
that
yeah.
path. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what is their role in that? Like,
basically one snake is like in service with the gods, and or like so like it's kind of funny because like most of the gods are like kind of dead at this point, or
yeah,
like some of them, and it's just like it's become like restarting the cycle has become so ingrained in like people's minds that like they know, like they think they're saving the world, when in reality they're just like basically just restarting it.
right.
um so like one of the snakes is like, yeah buddy, go light the fire again. Um and then like the other snake is like, yo, like take the blue pill and escape, or the red pill and yeah.
Yeah. That's another one that like the Matrix has happened or it's implied that yeah. Uh we don't talk about that. Um okay, I got one a little bit more modern. Um and spoilers for the game Horizon Zero Dawn. So
I haven't played it.
okay. So I'm
No,
not gonna
it's cool. It's cool.
okay, well, even still, I won't spoil the
I
actual
Wikipedia the plot.
okay. This guy. Sorry. You got me. Um yeah, so I think I should address there is a little bit of a problematic part of this game. And it does get addressed in the backstory of the game. Um because in like the trailers and stuff, we see people who are sort of wearing garb that alludes to or is inspired by or ripped from, in some people's opinions, indigenous cultures and tribes. Um, and the reason for that in the game is because this is not our world as we know it now. It's our Earth, but this is thousands of years in the future. And so you'd see in the game these animals that are all machine. And then you'd see like these cities that have been completely grown over and rusted with time, stuff like that. And then these people who are clad like tribal people, but they're wearing like plastics and like metals and like super advanced tech. So it didn't really make sense. Like that was sort of the appeal of the game, was like finding out what like how this actually happened. And as you do in the game, it's something called the Pharaoh Plague. So Pharaoh is a company, Ted Pharaoh being their creator, and it's Pharaoh Automated Solutions, I think. And so basically, the game's backstory takes place in our Earth's future, where technology has advanced so much that most things have become automated. Most militaries are using like robots and drones. Um, and the Pharaoh company, they produce these robots, these military robots, and they make them unhackable because they need to, because otherwise it would be a conflict of interest. So if you're like a hacker or working for some other party involved in this skirmish or whatever, you can't actually gain access to another party's war machine at all. Like the encryption codes take hundreds of years. Now, keep that in mind, hundreds of years to crack. So you see where this is going. These machines eventually, like, there's one report, like I should say, they can heal themselves, I'm using quotation marks, or like duplicate themselves, replicate themselves, I should say, by consuming biomaterial. So in most cases, like because they're machines, they need some sort of power source. And so they convert biomass, so like a tree, let's say, into fuel. But they can also use the slain corpses of the people, similar to the thing you're talking about, Luka, to fuel themselves. So that's very dark and grim, not cool at all. But there is this log in the game, like you come across like this recording of like a news transport, like, oh, Pharaoh machine seen just like turning these pile of dolphins, and I think the quote is blended milkshake of dolphin chunks. And that's the first instance of them being like, okay, that was weird. This one probably should be out of commission. But the problem is you can't take them out of commission. You can't hack into these things. So to turn it off, you either destroy it or it destroys you. And so eventually these robots stop taking commands and just start harvesting biomass and replicating themselves, and over and over and over and over again, and they can't be shut down. So Ted Farrow, who owns this company, this is becoming a huge issue, gets this woman called Elizabeth Sobek to come, and she basically tells him, I've done the calculations, you have 15 months before all life on Earth is eradicated. He says, well, how can I solve it? How long will it take you to crack and shut down these things? And she goes, yeah, probably like 250 years to hack into these machines and shut them down. So it's not just the end of society, it's the end of humanity. It's the end of life on Earth. Basically, the Earth is going to turn into a gray nothingness of, metal and plastics. Anything that's alive is being consumed by these robots and replicated. Yeah, so it's pretty dark, a terrible thing to live through. And so they devised this plan called Zero Dawn, where the name of the game comes from. And so all the armies of the world unite, civilians and everything, to fight off this robot. I don't even know what you would call it, a massacre. It's called a plague, but and so it's basically hopeless, and they're pretty much sending people to their deaths. And they're telling them that Project Zero Dawn is this super weapon that's going to destroy all the robots, like an EMP type of thing, which also don't work on these type of things. So these people like just give their lives to buying more time for Zero Dawn to get completed so that there's a hope for the world. But what Zero Dawn actually is this project where they're collecting all the information of Earth, and they're making this system that 300, 400 years from now, when the Earth is completely destroyed because there's no way to stop it, it'll reboot. There's like these machines that we're building that'll, come out of the Earth in these things called foundries, like these laboratory type of things, and start like reseeding the Earth and making sure all the levels are fine so that it's exactly how our Earth came to be. But they can do it much faster than the billions of years our Earth took, or I don't know science, so maybe it's a different number. Anyways, and they're collecting all the information of Earth's history to provide to these children that they have like as seeds, that this program, I think her name is Gaia, like this AI that they create to like raise these children as they come out and give them the information so they don't make the same mistakes again. But Ted Farrow, the owner of this company, he actually ends up deleting that program because he doesn't want to be blamed for it in the annals of time, even though everyone he knows will be dead. So it's a weird sort of motivation. But he says like they need to be given their own chance to start over. It's really messed up. Sorry, he kills all of the people working on this project. And they basically have to restart. And there's also this other program called Hades that if anything goes wrong with this terraforming process, Hades destroys it all and they'll start again. So the world where the game takes place in is that these humans were born into the world without any prior knowledge of what the fuck happened. And so having cities that are like abandoned and grown over is just like a normal thing, and don't go there. Bad things happen there. All the animals, most of the animals, I should say, in their world are like machines. And eventually the machines stop working on their roles as like terraformers and just become like sort of mindless machines. And so that's why there's like a tribal sort of look to the characters. That feels like a lot of justification to explain like maybe don't culturally appropriate indigenous people without their consent. Yeah, so I'm definitely not an apologist for this game. I should state that. But it is really cool. And what a terrible thing to live through. Like imagine you're just a person like, yeah, I will give my life to fight for this cause and buy some more time. And there's a scientist and they're like, oh man, I really wish you didn't have to do this because none of this matters. And even for like the scientists who are like spared, I guess, from dying from this robot invasion, they're sort of building a future for a world they'll never see because they're not able to sort of like reproduce amongst themselves, because any life, as soon as the robots, they're in like a bunker, but as soon as the robots consume all the life outside of the bunker, they'll be able to sense what like a faint energy of any life inside. So everyone has to die in order for the world to like restart itself. It's very, very dark. um I won't, there's like a big spoiler involved with the character you play and their significance to like the history of the world. But yeah, uh I feel like every time I do my piece, I'm like, man, I've been talking for like 35 minutes. So I'll throw it back over to you, Luca.
So would you survive that?
No, dude, like there's no way. It is numerically impossible to survive. Like,
I could do
yeah,
it.
you couldn't do it. Yeah, at sort of like what part of the game is those robots get reactivated and it's like, yeah, we gotta shut this down right away. um yeah, it's pretty messed up. Would not survive.
Would not recommend.
And I would not be qualified to work on that project, so I would go out
No,
in the
man.
blazes.
I'd be like guys like driving home one day, you see like a robot making a milkshake out of dolphins, be like, yo, what is
Yeah, what is going on with the robots, dude?
That's not cool.
Yeah, you're like the eyewitness reporter on the news.
Yeah.
He's like a milkshake of dolphin chunks, dude. Oh yeah, no, it's absolutely terrible. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, man, these are such depressing topics. I have a terrible one would be, I don't know if you guys have played Fallout, but
Mhm.
that's a pretty survivable one. Lots of people survive the Fallout apocalypse and turn into ghouls.
Yeah,
I
great.
I would not. I would hate that very much, but I would
Going
survive
smooth skin.
it. Yeah.
Oh, are you moving on to ones that you would survive now?
No. Yeah, I mean that I would survive that one. I would. I would be a
Okay.
ghoul. But yeah, now let's talk about a couple we would survive because that's a slightly lighter
Oh, okay.
feeling, I think, rather than all
Oh,
the
did that whole
chemicals.
time you thought I was explaining a situation I thought I would survive? That's
Oh no,
hilarious.
no, no.
Okay, okay.
I would.
Yeah, but I am simply built different. I don't know what the fuck they were on.
Nothing like any of you.
For one that I think I would survive, the Red Wedding. I would have survived the Red Wedding.
No, just.
And
I was
No,
supposed to
just
say going
leave,
in.
bro.
I wouldn't
Don't
have
go
even
there.
gone. Like I wouldn't have even gone. Like just this, just remembering the setup from like the show. 'Cause I haven't read the book, but from the show, it's like Robb Stark was betrothed, or she was supposed to get married to the Frey's daughter.
Yeah.
He falls in love, gets married, and she gets pregnant without them ever notifying the Freys. The Freys find out, knowing the type of people the Freys are. You're like, oh, I wonder how they'll take this
Yeah.
public rejection and shaming. And they're like, oh, I'll come to this wedding where nothing suspicious is definitely going to happen. I would just been like, I'm good. I'll just stay.
But
And
what was, I can't even remember. Why did they have to go? There's some like crossing that they needed for the
yeah, because the Freys, they control the crossing of the, what is it called, Twin Rivers or something like that.
something, yeah.
They control the only crossing of that river to the
Trident.
south. Yes, the trident. You're right. Yes, but I would have survived the red wedding by not going.
I simply would not have showed up. No, thank you.
I mean, again, I would have just been like a foot soldier in that situation. Probably wouldn't have been invited. Just be hear about it like, yo, damn, that's crazy.
Damn.
Cut his head
Dude.
off, put
Yeah,
this
that
wolf's head
sucks.
on his body, like, jeez.
No, I've always been with the phrase, actually. Yeah. No, this is like I've
I'm
been
actually
here.
Frey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've always sort of been this way, actually. No, I'll jump on here because mine is also from Game of Thrones.
Super
I'm
survivable
gonna
series,
say
by
it.
the way.
Here comes super hot take coming in. The Long Night. I would have been up and no, yeah. So what? So it was dark. There was a bunch of white people around, and it got cold. I'm from Alberta, bro. This is 7 months of every year of my life have been this way. What the fuck? It's dark outside. What? Yo, shut up. The fuck? Make electricity. Get the fuck out of here. Goddamn idiots. Absolute buffoons. I can't. The night is coming. Winter's coming. Winter's been here, man. I see the sun 3 days a year, and I'm happy. Motherfuckers complain too much in Game of Thrones, and I'm sick of hearing about it.
Honestly, Game of Thrones is easy.
Yeah, just stay away from sketchy-looking people and don't cross anybody. But also, like, people just murk you in that universe.
Yeah, no,
'Cause
it's a
they,
horrible
you know,
place to live
Yeah.
unless you're like super rich.
Yeah, I would have made NFTs in Game of Thrones. At me, bro. Go ahead, Will.
I'll be honest, like all of my examples were actually like the ones that I didn't say were actually like worse than the ones I said. So like for example, like the Chimera invasion with like from like the Resistance series, was pretty horrible. The Reaper invasion in Mass Effect, pretty terrible. The Great Roar of the Astral World from Berserk is even worse, which is basically like the spirit world merging with the real world.
Oh, okay.
Mythical world, and like the Berserk universe being as like hellishly dark and disgusting as it is just like even worse. Where it's basically like if you don't live in this one particular city, like you just die because
Man, that is a great campaign setting. Holy.
it actually was because like as a side note, like one of the reasons why I like the Berserk series is because it's like darker takes on like fairy tales and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
I mean, so like
Shrek.
yeah, kind of like so you know how like a lot of like Western companies like for a while they were always like developing like I guess like content, be it like movies, video games, whatever, like that were always like set in like Japan specifically, or like other parts of East Asia. And like usually they get like a lot of it wrong and stuff like that, which and like I kind of like Berserk because it's like the reverse.
Oh, it's set like in Western fantasy and it's wrong.
So it's all like based in like Middle Ages and stuff like that. But like, yeah. So like their take on like I guess like a fairy tale troll, Snark or Grumpkin is like a lot like hellishly terrible and gross. And like I mean you could survive, just like go to the city. But yeah, I don't want to like ruin any spoilers, but then again Berserk moves super slow because the creator never makes anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we could move on to just how would we use this in a fantasy, in like if you were like for example like creating like a D&D setting. I think we could just throw it back to how it's always been, how these like events, particularly in narratives, have always been used in humanity, which is basically like wiping the slate clean, which is what we talked about earlier with the floods, or being like using it as a way to like I guess like set the foundation for like a creation story of like or like understanding like how the world works, because basically, like, maybe if you were writing fantasy and like if you want to just like pull like a quick cop out and like don't want to do that much world building, for example, like if it's your first book in the series or something like that, you could be like, I don't know, nobody really knows what happens prior to like this great forest fire or a drought or
Yeah.
plague, and then one day all of that ended because someone stopped it, and now it's everything's cool and this is the world that we live in. So I think that's a good thing. Or you could just use it as like a nuke to like reset the narrative and just kill everyone and move on.
Yeah. No, I agree with all those points. I think like as someone who's trying to like come up with a world, this is like your all-in-one setup. You can bring in your pantheon, like the gods flooded the world, or you can bring in like relationships between different groups of people. Like, so this is like a like demonic invasion, but the elves never helped us. And so since then, we don't really fuck with the elves because, you know, where were you? Like sort of like a where was Gondor moment. Um, that type of thing. So you can set all that up from having this one like cataclysmic event, or even set up like, okay, I want this story to take place where there's like really cool ruins everywhere. Like, okay, so the world had to be destroyed before you could just put ruins somewhere, kind of thing. Yeah, or you know, or I want there to be like this ancient evil that is like the big bad guy. Okay, well then tell us how he got defeated the first time and what that looked like and like the effects of that afterwards. So I think like it's a super easy way to address all those topics while not only like world building but building like a lore for your story, like a beginning of the timeline, because it is like a cleanse. So all the things that sort of happened before ancient history and they don't need to be addressed unless you want to, you know, cut off the middle of your series to take a book and spend there. But otherwise, then you just get like a clean slate. You don't have to worry about creation myths and what the forebears thought. What do you think, Luca? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Will.
Oh yeah, just a super brief follow up is I think it'd be cool because you could use it to like create like mystery.
Yeah.
You could have like characters, for example, in like a D&D. Yeah, so like an example, like from like that one campaign we played with when Luka was DMing us. Haha.
What was your character's name again?
Man, come on.
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
Grunor. Oh yeah, so like, so remember, like we were like walking through like those like that cavern system and, or I guess like dungeon thing, and we see all these like constructions, but like we had no idea what was going on, like who created them. So you could use it like in that instance.
Right.
Yeah. Back to you, Luca.
Yeah. So just one thing, Berserk is a great example of this. That is one of the most relentlessly depressing stories I've ever read in my life. Like, I don't know how any normal person survives that world. Anyway, yeah, I like these types of events in fantasy are like essentially the building block of fantasy. Like, you can't have epic heroes and epic moments without the opposite. You know, like you can't have like a normal world where there's nothing wrong and then like a hero shows up and does something cool. Like,
yeah,
you know, you can't have the good without the bad. You need the comparison. Like, to like start a hero's journey, you need the like the big bad guy or the cataclysm or whatever. And like every fantasy world has the apocalypse, the cataclysm, the event, the, you know, whatever. And then like the area that was affected by it, where you see like the ruins or it turns into a desert or whatever it is. But I mean, that's just like, that's just like a trope of being a civilization, you know, like we have thousands and thousands of ruins on this planet. Like,
right.
Civilizations rise and fall, and it just happens like
and
natural
we
disaster.
also have myths about world cleansing events or world
Yeah,
shaping
exactly.
cataclysmic events. Yeah.
Like just to get the scale of these stories, like sci-fi fantasy, you need these like massive, super difficult times for your characters to have something to overcome to begin with. Like, so in terms of like how they're used in fantasy, yeah, you could use it as like the setup or like ancient history or whatever it is. But yeah, I think it's just like you need the juxtaposition of the horrifying to have those glorious moments. Like there's a moment at the end of um Memories of Ice, after whatever happens with the Panyan Seer happens, where there's like one character that just like has this moment of redemption. It just like it's so much more powerful once you've gotten through the cannibalism and the women giving birth to dead seeds and stuff that. Like it just like it gives you so much more of like a cathartic moment after you get through all this like horrifying, depressing, like just unsurvivable moments to get to the like breath of fresh air that is the hero's conquest. I mean, if the hero loses, then it just like you got berserk. But
yeah, but I see like even to that point, having the setup for the world, not necessarily the story of being that similar like to what I was talking about, like with the Zelda example, the hero losing or the world losing is a great event level thing to set up your world, right? Like the flood happens because we couldn't defeat Ganondorf, and that's why everything's on an island. Okay, cool. Like new setting, let's go. Yeah, no, I agree in that. I find them like it's a trope, but I feel like it's one of those ones that is essential. Like again, like you were saying, Will, like adding mystery. Like if we go to the ruins, like why are these here, and why isn't anyone talking about them? Why can't we understand them? It's sort of even reminds me of like people thinking the pyramids were built by aliens and shit. Like we just don't understand how it was done, so we have to make up, some out there like myth about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a product of being humans and having a story. Like if you want like a fantasy, like a world scale event, then you need like a antagonist that can affect the world at that level for there to even be a reason for the hero to rise, because otherwise it's like, where's the story even happening?
Yeah.
Any
any final thoughts? Probably broached that a little bit, but Will, do you have any final thoughts?
I guess I would probably be able to survive all of it.
Because you're superior to children. That's
yeah.
And on that note, that'll wrap up this episode and our topic on the worst things to experience as a person in the fictional universe. That's a mouthful. We'll probably find a better title for the video. But thanks for joining us here. Remember to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram at Lords of Lore. And we are available on anywhere you might listen to podcasts. We had a little bit of an upload error with last week, but surely now we have solved that issue and are ready to go. So our RSS feed is linked in the description of this video and on our Instagram page as well. So I am Matt.
I'm Luka.
And I'm Will.
And we are the Lords of Lore. We'll see you guys next week.